We can get going here. So this will be my last week here with you guys talking about English. I might be back later, filling in for someone else doing a different subject, but we'll worry about that when we get here. This is the last week we'll be doing English, so the first thing I want to do is just clear up any holes because I know a lot of you guys took the test this weekend. So we'll talk about how we felt about that, a bunch of different things there, a few other just like small test taking things. And then we'll probably leave the second half of class to just do like one or two more practices. I guess there's not really much more we can do like teaching wise to change things now just because we've only got one class left. So I just really want to continue practicing and you guys to be here with me when we're practicing so we can ask questions and figure things out and work through any other small things we have left to kind of fix. But I want to start with, so you two took the test this weekend. Online, can you like do the little hand raise emoji thing if you took the test this weekend? Okay, cool. Lots of people took it. Okay. Awesome. So we'll get a ton of feedback. Oh my gosh, did everyone take it? Wow. Okay. So let's start with you guys. I'll give you guys each a turn to talk, but do you have like, just give me a rundown of the whole test. What did you think you felt?
I felt like it was a little difficult, but time management was kind of.
Time was you feel that for all the sections or just specific ones are harder than others?
I think English was probably my worst with time management.
With time? Okay. So for anyone wondering, they were saying here that English was tricky and time management was the biggest issue. What about you? Same thing kind of?
English was too hard, but my timing was pretty good, but there were a few questions that...
On English?
Yeah.
What about the other subjects? You felt okay on those?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What about anybody online? Feel free to just speak up and say anything you have, comments about the test. Nobody?
I think it wasn't that difficult, but like time management got hard.
Okay.
Kind of bring a watch. I feel like that would have been a good idea.
Okay. So time management seems to be an issue for a lot of different people. We had trouble with time management on this one. Anybody else? And even if you're just agreeing with what someone else said, the more feedback, the better.
I feel like managing time was a lot harder. At some parts were really wordy.
Were really wordy?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think just on English or on reading, like across all the sections, or?
It was only reading and science.
Reading? Okay. And science also? Okay. Did everyone feel okay about math? What about you guys? Math, okay? Decent, yeah. Did you guys have to guess at all? Did you get through all the questions? Pretty much? Yeah, okay. What about online? You guys get through questions on math? Okay. Okay, cool. Someone? Did I have to pick on somebody? Okay, well, no one wants to. Ben, tell me, did you get through all the questions? How do I unmute this guy? I don't know how to work Zoom. All right, forget about it, whatever. Okay, let's rein in specifically on English. Was there, so you said time management was the tricky part? Okay, I have a few things we can talk about for that. That'll hopefully help cut that a little bit. Was there any specific questions you guys remember that stood out that were like, this one was hard? Like any type of question really that showed up more than we were used to? Did you guys have a vocab question come up at all? Was there one to be like a vocab? There was one. Did you guys know what the words meant? Some of them. Okay. That's kind of what I heard from over there too, that there was, the vocab question was a little bit weird. And then also, so time management we'll talk about. What about reading? Was reading tricky to manage the time, or did you guys get through that okay? Okay on that one? Okay. The other class said they had more trouble with reading on the time management than English, but I mean, well, it's different for everyone. So I'm assuming you guys are also going to take the December test. Everyone's taking that one? Okay. what I've noticed from the past is October and December are very indicative of the other. The summer tests are impossible to predict, but October and December normally have kind of flip flopped on difficulty. So if October was super hard, December tends to be a lot easier. And of course, if the test is easier, your score isn't really going to get affected too much, because if the test is hard, they'll weight the score. Like, you'll get a curve, and if the test is easy, you just won't. So, like, your score really won't be super affected on if it's easy or hard, but, sometimes that can make a difference for some people, so just be ready for that. If you guys thought English was a little bit harder this time, it might be easier the next time. Obviously, we don't really know that, and easy and hard are both subjective things here. Some people find certain types of questions harder than others. But in general, it's normally a little bit flip-flop between October and December. They normally take a lot of feedback from October and how people did and apply that to the December test. So just look out for that, I guess. I mean, don't count on it, but you might see it be a little bit easier in December. So hopefully we can perform better all together on that. And then obviously when you do get scores back and stuff, talk to any of us. You can send them to any of us and we can help you. Talk through what felt good, what felt bad, those type of things. Anything you have for feedback really helps us, especially on how to teach the next class and what the ACT is really moving toward. Because obviously we only get to see the test through your guys' eyes. We're not taking the test anymore, so it's like it can be hard for us to adjust what we're teaching. So just keep giving feedback and what you guys think you need more of or less of or whatever. So for time management, a few things I want to talk about. The main thing is bubbling is like a thing that's completely new. When we practice in here, I tend not to make you guys use like a bubble sheet, and then obviously on the test you do have to. So I'll pick on you two guys in a minute here also about how you did that, but first I want to ask anybody, did you guys practice with a bubble sheet when you practiced at home? Or you just circled them? Yeah. Just circled? Yeah. That's what I did too. I just circled for practice the first time I took it. Is that what most people online, you can just send a thumbs up here. Did mostly just practiced with circling? Yeah, okay. So didn't use a bubble sheet in practice. Okay. Pretty much the same. Yeah, I think that's a tough thing to adjust to when you show up on test day and now you have to use a bubble sheet rather than just circling the answers. So today I think we're going to practice with the bubble sheet just in case. I might implement that where we're just practicing more. But I have a few bubbling strategies I want to talk about also. I know that sounds ridiculous, bubbling strategies, but I promise you it can save you a lot of time and help your brain work a little bit cleaner too when you're going through the test. Obviously, I've talked about this before. The environment when we're doing it in here, practicing is a lot different than when you're doing it on the test. Here, there's going to be this stopwatch that's telling you how fast to go. There's just a clock somewhere, and you don't really know those type of things. And obviously, it matters a lot more when you're doing it in there. So there's a ton of different things that could happen, really. And obviously, you're using a bubble sheet. So I want to start with bubbling. When you guys did bubble on the test, I'm going to ask you two guys first. Did you still circle it on the actual paper, or did you just go directly to the bubble sheet?
I just went directly.
Directly to the, is that what you did too?
Mine was online.
Oh, what the heck? An online option. Okay. So I guess this doesn't really apply to you,
It's only
but
practice. I don't circle it at all.
you don't? You just go directly to the bubble? Okay. Someone's in the waiting room here. Online, can I get some feedback on that too? Do you guys, anyone feel free to speak up here, but did you guys on the actual test circle the answer in the test booklet and then bubble it? Or did we just go directly to bubbling, or how did we do that?
Directly to bubbling.
Directly?
I went to bubbling, sure. No circling.
No circling?
Yeah, I circled and bubbled.
Okay, so most people are saying, I got a message here saying bubbling too, so most people just going directly to bubbling. Okay, so then I'm assuming you guys went one by one. You answered a question, then bubbled it, then answered a question, then bubbled it directly. Okay. My recommendation for, and I'll give you some backing for this too. I just want to tell you what the idea is first so we know what we're talking about. But my recommendation is to circle all 15. So do an entire passage just in the test booklet and don't even look at the answer sheet. And then bubble all 15 in. And then move to the next one and do all of those 15 questions, answer them in the test booklet, then bubble them in, and then so forth. I'll give you a few different reasons for it first, but so Manoj has a lot more information and studies on this. So if you want like actual numbers or like facts for this, I would ask Manoj. But the general trend really there, I don't know exactly the psychology behind this, but what really tends to, and I don't know how much I've said this, but the ACT is a rhythm test where if things are going well, they tend to continue going well. And if things start badly, then they could tend to continue going badly. So it's important that you have some sort of rhythm or momentum when you're going through. And when you, I mean, everyone feels that, right? When you're in like kind of a more like a flowy type of state, things just start to keep going and it gets easier and you're not thinking so much and it's just like happening. And that's what we want. We want you guys to get to that state where you're just confidently flowing through the test. And there's two different reasons I really like this, doing all of them and then bubbling. One is that it continues, it lets you kind of flow through. So like as you're going, you're not continuously turning your attention entirely away from the test to bubble something in and then coming back. I know that doesn't seem like a big deal, but it can kind of like disrupt your flow a little bit where you're like flipping back and forth between two tasks like that. So that's one thing. And also there tends to be a benefit where in between passages, you're giving yourself like a small 15 to 30 second break kind of, where not that you would need the break, not that your brain is like fried and you're tired from doing the test, but there is a little bit of like proven benefit in you went through an entire passage, you're bubbling in the answer sheet, and it's not taking much mental energy to take the thing you circled and then bubble it. I mean, you're not thinking about that. But as you're doing that, you kind of give yourself 15 to 30 seconds to reflect on what you just did. So like, well, what do you think? Was this passage easy? Was this passage hard? Maybe I spent too much time. Maybe I didn't spend enough time. Stuff like that. You have time to process that. So you're giving yourself a brain break and you're giving yourself some time to think about how did that go and do I need to make any adjustments basically. So like little breaks like that may not seem like a big deal, but they can make a difference. They can make the test easier for you. And also there is a small horror story that Manoj just told me about where there was a student who was bubbling each one back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And she skipped a question and she didn't skip a question in the bubble sheet. So it was like question 4 that she skipped. And then she's bubbling, bubbling, bubbling. She's doing perfectly fine. There's about 4 minutes left and she gets to question 75 and realizes she just bubbled in question 74. And she's like, oh shoot. So now all of her bubbles are one off. And like, I know that doesn't happen often, but like stuff like that can be kind of freaky if you get something like that and now all of your questions are going to be wrong. So it's just another reason I would recommend doing 15, like circling them on the test booklet and then going to bubble them in. Does that make sense? So, and obviously if you don't like that strategy and it just doesn't work for you, it just completely whatever, feel free to do it your own way. But my recommendation would be to do it that way. That works for English and for reading, and I guess for science too, would be do a passage, circle, and then bubble, and then move on. Yeah. And then for math, everyone has a different strategy. I'm not sure what Manoj recommends, so maybe you could ask him. But the way I did it when I took the test was to do an entire page, bubble all those in, and then flip the page, answer all those, then bubble them in, flip the page. So that's like the way I liked my rhythm. Other people like it different ways. So just find what works for you there, but I would strongly recommend circling and then bubbling. I know that doesn't exactly work for the online test, so I don't know. I don't have any experience with the online test, so I don't exactly know what to say there, but definitely for the written, I would do it that way. And then another thing that may help with time management is it's just about skipping questions, really. I know this is an advanced class, and I know we all want to, I mean, everyone wants a 36, right? Everyone wants to get every question right. But it's important to remember we aren't here. I wouldn't think of it as try to get every question right. I would think of it as get the most questions right you can. The important thing is you get more questions right, you get a better score. And it's also important to remember that each question has the same weight. So on math, we know that question 1 is way easier than question 60. It gets harder as you move along, right? But if you miss question 1 and if you miss question 60, they're worth the same amount. It doesn't matter. If you get question 1 right or you get question 60 right, it doesn't matter. They're worth the same amount. They're both 1 of 60, right? So the idea behind saying this is that, especially on math, this happens all the time on math, they'll put like a really, really stingy question on like 41, like 35 to 45 area, where it'll be one question that's like just takes like 4 minutes. It's just such a long process to solve it. And you know, most of you can do that question. You know how to do it. It's just going to take you a while. And those ones, personally, I would recommend just skipping and going on to the next one, because you don't want to leave easy points on the table ever. If you spend too much time doing a hard question and you get it right, but you weren't able to get to 2 easy ones at the end, well, then you made a mistake, because the 2 easy ones are worth more than the 1 hard one. So if the question is hard, please, 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 I know this is hard sometimes to do, but just skip it. Just forget about it and go to the next one. Each question is worth the same amount. Don't waste your time doing a hard question. And then by the end, if you want to come back and actually do those, then great. And if you can get through all of them that way, great. But it's just so important that you're actually getting all the easy questions. Don't leave easy points on the table. So I would skip around if you have to, especially on math. English and reading, it's a little bit more tricky to do that because, or I guess in science too, because the passages aren't related to each other. So in that regard, I would just skip the questions that are hardest in that passage and then come back to them and then move on. So still skipping is an important thing that, and especially if you start to get, if you feel like you're wasting too much time, just bubble in an answer and move on. It's okay. That's one question. And there's a lot of questions on each and every one of these tests. So it's really important that you don't get hung up, because like I said before, this is very much a rhythm test. And if you get hung up, then it makes the next question harder and the next question harder, and you just start to like, your whole trajectory is going to kind of go down from there. So like, if something is taking you too long, just forget about it. Just restart and move on. Go to the next one. I think that can help you a lot. Keep your momentum going. That's one thing. And also, I mean, each question is worth the same amount. So if you don't get that one, it's okay. The next one might be really easy, and that one's worth the same. So just keep pushing forward, really. You guys have any other general questions or feedback from that test? Nothing really. And online, does anyone have anything else? They like any questions about any section or anything I just said? Nothing. Okay, cool. I'm assuming most of you, had you guys taken the test before? Is this your first time? First time? Both of you? Okay. They gave you that test 5 at the end? Okay. Yeah, did they explain what that was? No? Okay, just really quick, if in case anyone's wondering. They gave you that little test 5 at the end. We'd never seen that before. We never practiced with it. Basically, it's like a survey that they're doing. Do you guys remember what subjects it was? Was it science? Math. Was yours?
I didn't have one.
You're online. Okay. Well, yeah, the test 5, basically what happens is, what the ACT is intending to do is that if it's a math test, for example, they'll take a weighted score that you got on that test 5 and compare it to your actual score. So let's say on the actual math test you got a 34, and then you get like a 34 on the test 5. Well, then they're saying, okay, the questions we put on here are reasonable difficulty based on the rest of the test. But let's say you got a 34 on the actual test, and on test 5 you got like a 27. Well, then they might be, this is a really big difference. So maybe the test we put on test 5 is too hard. So they'll try to make the questions easier as they move on to the... So it's basically just testing out new questions. And some people might have had English, some people might have had science, reading. It's just a way to test new questions. However, I think they're putting less weight on them now because there tends to be a trend, and I was definitely one of these kids, and I don't feel bad about it. But all the time when they would say, like, oh, this test 5 is happening, don't worry, it doesn't affect your score. And as soon as I hear it doesn't affect my score, they pass me the sheet, and I just, like, blindly pick random answer choices, like, because... So then I'm sure, like, my scores looked probably pretty good on the actual test and probably pretty horrible on test 5 because I didn't do it. So I think they're putting less emphasis on it because they're like, oh, this is interesting. This kid got, like, a 36 in the English here, but then on the test 5 he got, like, a 16. What's going on? So, like, I'm sure a lot of people did that. So I think they're putting less emphasis on it, and it's interesting to see they're not even applying it onto the online test. So I feel like they might even just remove it soon because I think personally, it's kind of silly. I just don't think kids have the energy to give you any valuable information on a survey by the end of a 4-hour test. So, like, hopefully they'll go away from that. But in case anyone was wondering what that was, if it was your first time, that's the idea behind test 5. Yeah, so someone said something about a watch. I also want to talk about that. Did you guys bring watches in? No? Did you guys feel okay, like, knowing when to start and when to stop? Did they give you, like, a 5-minute warning? Okay. Did they give you a 10-minute warning? Wow. Okay. You had a nice proctor. You didn't?
Mine had a timer.
Oh, I guess online. I don't know anything about this online test, so I'm sorry. But okay, that's really nice that it had a timer. Anyone online, do you guys have any feedback on time? Like, were you able to tell how much time you had left? Someone, come on.
I mean, we had a 5-minute warning, but that wasn't that helpful because you didn't. It felt like too much work to be looking up at the clock and
Yeah.
checking like what your was.
Yeah, I agree. I used to have trouble because my test center, the clock was behind me. So constantly, if you wanted to check how much time you had left, you had to fully turn your body around, which is really frustrating. So yeah, it just feels like too much work because especially if it's a clock that's like, you got to use the hands. You got to like figure out how much time you have left. You have to do all this mental math that it's like, it's not even worth it. So yeah, having some sort of like silly goofy watch that doesn't have like internet capabilities would be a great thing to bring. That way you don't have to do so much mental whatever. Do be very, very careful with what kind of watch though, because if it beeps, they like do disqualify people. There was a kid in my test that the watch beeped and they gave him a warning, so it's not like a huge deal, but just like be careful, don't bring a watch that beeps. The one I brought, I just, as soon as I got to the test center, I took it off and just sat it there on the desk and didn't touch it, and I just watched it when I needed to. That's what I would recommend doing just to prevent anything. What about the breaks? Did you guys get, was it like 5 to 10 minute break?
I think ours was 15.
Okay, yeah. Is that what yours was? 15? Online people, is that what the break was? 15 minutes? Okay. Cool.
For me, she only gave us 5.
Oh, wow. Someone only had 5. That's terrible. Between math and reading, you got 5 minutes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she said you have 5 minutes to go outside and then you have to be back in.
That's stupid. Well, the guidelines say they're supposed to give you 15, but it never really is. Mano just told me a horror story of someone. They said they had like, oh, you'll have about 15 minutes. So she really needed to go to the bathroom. So she went. She came back about 10 minutes later, and they had already started the next test. So she lost like 3 minutes on her reading test. She was like, what the heck? So like stuff like that kind of stupidly happens every once in a while. It depends on your test center, but yeah, the break, okay, sounds like we had pretty reasonable experiences with that. Did you guys bring food to eat during the break? No? Did you feel hungry? No? Not really? Okay. Online, did you guys bring food?
Yeah, I brought Cheez-Its.
Cheez-Its is an excellent choice. That's a great choice. I'm seeing thumbs up. That's great. Manoj has, if you ask him, the time I took the test, he has an extremely particular things, like a group of things he wants you to bring. So he was like a banana, a protein bar, a chocolate bar, like orange juice and water. So like I had all these things. I had a little backpack and I had like full of snacks. And I got there, I ate a chocolate bar during the break, a banana, like a few orange slices and a protein bar, and then I drank orange juice. It was like all these things that he really believes it makes a difference if you have like a system. I don't exactly believe that, but I would highly recommend bring something. And then obviously water and blah, 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 whatever. But I'm glad so many people took the test this time because I think it'll really help you. Now you really know what being in the test center is like. I know a lot of you have taken the test before, but this is going to be really similar to what you're going to see in December, so that's good. I'm very curious about this online test. I had no idea they were already starting that. But very interesting to hear that they had a timer. That's really nice. You were able to see your time the whole time. Interesting. Okay, I'll ask Manoj a little bit more about the online test. I'm not very informed about that. But can we pull out our red book again? We'll probably do 2, if we can get through 2 passages today. And my one note today would be, if you would like to, it's a good chance to maybe practice using the bubble sheet a little bit, because I know a lot of you didn't practice and kind of went in your own way, and that's perfectly fine. Today, the first passage you do, I would recommend trying what I told you about doing all the questions and then bubbling them all in. And then if you don't like it or if it's uncomfortable or whatever, that's perfectly fine. Go back. But just for this one, I would appreciate it if everyone tried doing that. And again, if you don't like it, that's perfectly fine. But can someone tell me where we left off last time? I have literally no clue. I forgot. 8 something, right? Yeah. Here we are somewhere. Yeah, perfect. Are we on 890?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we'll start there. If anyone wants to, there is a bubble sheet on like 880. It looks like this kind of, online people, I don't know if you can see that, but it's very easy to just rip out and then use those top 75. This is pretty similar to what you're going to see on the actual ACT. There's like this whole form next to it that you're going to fill out before you take the test and all this stuff. So if you would like to, feel free to use that. It'd be pretty cool and good practice to use. They put in 2 of them on each, so in case you rip one or something. Yeah, so if you want, rip that out. We can use that to practice today too. We will start on page 890. We'll do question 46 through 60. And then we'll come back together and discuss any questions anyone has. And then we'll see if we can get through one more. If we rush, we should be good. Is everyone ready? Okay. We'll start on 46. Question 46. We'll have 9 minutes. All right. And go ahead. All right. That was 9 minutes. Do we have time to finish in person? We good? Yeah, pretty much. Online, can I get like some thumbs up if you finished in the time we had? Cool. Everybody looks to have done well. Okay, cool. Let's go through the answers then. We'll start at 46. Okay, so 46, I have F. 47, A. 48, F. 49, B. 50, G. 51, D. 52, J. 53, A. 54, G. 55, D. 56, J. 57, C. 58, J. 59, B. And 60, H. All right. So I'm just gonna open this up right away. I don't want to cover any questions you guys already know. So I'm just gonna open this up straight up to. Does anyone have any of those they would like to look at in a little bit more depth? You guys? First, I'll let you guys. 58. Cool. Okay, yeah, this is a good example of that economy rule we talked about, where not only is it important to say things in less words, but also you don't want to say things that aren't relevant. So we're talking about here, the previous sentence is talking about, oh, well, if I'll keep checking the times for word of this artist's next show. And then he's saying, when I walk home from the urban village, its decor being blah, 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 blah. I don't think a description of where the urban village or even what that is really relevant to what we're talking about. He's more referring to that next part that's just trying to conclude, where he's saying, I wonder if I'll pass by the brownstone building where Black creates his art. So I don't think that the description really of the urban vintage is really important. So I would just go with J here and just eliminate any other like excess stuff that isn't important. So F obviously mentions more description of the place that isn't really relevant. G says, easily carrying my lightweight laptop in my old navy blue messenger bag. Well, I mean, that's cool, but like it doesn't really add anything, you know? If you were to remove that, it doesn't change the meaning at all. H, I can't be late to meet a friend exactly at 8. Again, that's an interesting detail, but it's not really relevant to what we're talking about. And it doesn't, if you were to remove that part, it doesn't change anything in the meaning. So that's why J makes the most sense there, because the other things are cool and interesting details, but they're just not relevant to what we're talking about. Does that make sense, kind of? Yeah. Okay. Did you guys have any other ones? Yeah.
How does whom and who work?
How does whom and who work? Okay, that's a great question. I'll make sure everybody can see this. So what I like to do with those, do you remember when we talked about, did I cover the cases of like he versus him kind of a little bit? So subjective and objective cases, right? That's basically what we're talking about here. I always just resort the pronoun he and him are the ones that I use. And so he would be like the subjective case and him is like the objective case, right? So basically, it's the same thing with who and whom. They fit just like that, where who is a subjective case and whom is an objective case. The only thing that makes that tricky is I still think people kind of struggle to realize which one's objective, which one's subjective, where does what go, what's the subject, what's the object. That's confusing, and unless you spend a lot of time really studying and understanding English like structure, I don't think that's the best way to do these type of questions. What I would recommend doing rather is, so the phrase here, the question we had was 46, right? What I do is plug in a pronoun that's you know very well. So that's why I wrote he and him up here, is I use he and him to correspond with whom and who. Because, so let's say you just went to this phrase and forget about all of the context before, just read the last part of the phrase, but instead of saying who or whom, say he or him. So if you were to say who here, it would be he had just been discovered. If you were to say whom, it could be him had just been discovered. And you see, now you realize him is just completely stupid. That doesn't make any sense. So then you would eliminate whom also. Does that make sense, kind of? So that's the check, really, that I would use for subjective and objective cases. It's just use a pronoun that you're more familiar with. And for me, I use he and him, but feel free to use whatever works for you. You could use like I and me if you wanted, or whatever else. But I think those ones work the best for me. You guys got any other questions? Nothing on this one. Online, you guys got anything?
Could you go over 52?
52, sure. Oh, okay. This one. So, did you pick F here?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think F is the most common answer choice on a question like this, where we've talked about in our comma rules. It's common when you have a name like that to hug it in commas, right? Becoming a non-essential phrase. But the check with the non-essential phrase is you do have to make sure it is non-essential. So what if, with a non-essential phrase, basically you're saying that if you were to eliminate that completely from the sentence and close the comma hug entirely, the sentence would still make perfect sense. So let's go through that process here, and if F is correct, that means that we can like remove Wilhelm Freddy entirely from the sentence, and it still should make sense. So if we were to just cross that out for now, and it read, it features a representation of a British psychedelic poster, a portrayal of Danish surrealist painter at work. Well, if you were to say a Danish surrealist painter, then I guess that's okay. But since if you read it as a portrayal of Danish surrealist painter at work, that doesn't exactly make sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's why
Thank you.
it can't be F. Yeah, it's just not. It can't be a non-essential clause. Yeah. Does anyone else have questions on this? Nothing. All right. Cool. Yeah, we got time for one more. So let's do one more passage here. Just go from 60 to the end, and then we'll come together again and talk about them in a minute here. All right. Again, I'll give you guys 9 minutes. Oh, also, I forgot to ask. Did the bubble sheets, what did you guys think of that? The strategy of that work okay for you guys? Okay. If you want to try a different thing this time, feel free. But if you liked that one, then stick with that too. It's all good. I'll give you 9 minutes, and you can start now. All right. There is 9 minutes. Go through the answers here. We'll start at question number 61, sorry. 61. Okay. Is everyone ready? Okay. 61 is D. 62F. 63C. 64H. 65D. 66G. 67A. 68J. 69D. 70J. 71B. 72H. 73A. 74H. And 75B. Okay. I would like to just open it up, but I'm pretty sure, it's okay, but did anyone get 69 incorrect? Was that one hard? Yeah, 69, going through this, would have expected that to be probably the most missed question. Online, 69, tricky one. Did someone say something? Sorry, you just lagged a little. Okay, whatever. Let's just, I do want to talk about that one because it's quite tricky. Okay, thumbs up. I think that means it was hard. But this is like a sentence structure thing that I didn't exactly cover when we were talking about it. But when you have something like, this is like a dependent kind of like introductory phrase, comma, independent, right? So it's saying 1 of 600, blah, 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 comma, all 12 of the missions were deemed successful. And the thing that makes D correct is that the beginning of the sentence is saying 1 of 600 birds that flew, blah, 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 blah. So they're talking about the bird himself, right? Not his missions right now. They're talking about the bird himself. That means that bird has to be the first thing that comes up after the comma. So that's why D has to be correct, because that's the only one that has this guy's name. I don't even know how you say this. Sher Ami, whatever. Has to be directly after the comma, because that's what they were talking about in the first part. So that has to be directly after the comma, and then you can talk about the missions if you want. So that's why D is correct and not the other one. That's a very difficult question, though. So don't feel bad about that one, but just remember that for next time, that if you're talking about something in that introductory phrase, make sure that thing is directly after the comma of that introductory phrase. Okay. Any other questions?
62.
62?
Yeah.
Okay, 62. Cool. Okay, so we have, in many urban areas, they are considered little more than rats with wings, blamed for spreading disease and spoiling statues. Okay? So let's go through all of the answer choices and check if each is grammatically correct. I'll start from the bottom here, so we'll start with J. If it were to say, more than rats with wings, period, blamed for spreading diseases, and, okay, obviously that's wrong, right? The second part is a dependent clause. It can't stand alone. So J, no. H, if it says they are considered little more than rats with wings, they are blamed for spreading diseases and despoiling statues. Well, there we would have a comma splice, because there's two independent clauses and they're not separated by something strong, like an independent, then a fanboys, comma, independent, or something like that, maybe a semicolon or a period here. But instead there's just nothing and there's a comma and they're just saying go on. So that's a comma splice. You can't really do that. So H would be grammatically incorrect also. I'm assuming you picked G, whoever asked that question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the issue with G is it falls under a rule that we covered the first week. So I know it's been a long time since we've talked about it. But there's a rule where you have an independent clause, a comma, a fanboys, and then another independent clause. Here we just have an independent clause, fanboys, independent clause. So it's the correct structure, but you would have to have a comma because there's two independent clauses on either side. So therefore G can't be correct, and F flows through perfectly fine. So I would pick F there, just because I wouldn't even have right away figured out that F is correct. I think I would have just eliminated the other ones. And G has that issue of it needs a comma. So that's why. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else here? You guys have anything? Online, you guys have any more? Yeah.
72.
72. Okay. Yeah, this one is tricky actually. The reason this one tends to get people off is that when you that was phrased weird. The reason that this one throws people off is that you have to continue reading a lot after to get the context of it. Because if you just read like a few words after, it was becoming clear that Americans were unaware. Okay. Having become, well, that doesn't make sense, right? Or like as it became, well, that doesn't make sense. It became, okay. If you just read a little bit, then you might not get. But if you read all the way through the sentence, where if you read it as, it was becoming clear that the Americans were unaware of the 77th's whereabouts, the situation grew dark. So now you see there's a comma splice there if the first part is independent, right? So now you know the first part of the sentence before that comma has to be a dependent clause or an introductory phrase. So that would eliminate F and J because both of those make that phrase independent. Does that make sense? Following there? Okay. Now if you were to say, are you just confused about if it's G or H? Is that more the issue?
What? No, I messed up the independent.
Okay, so that was the idea basically. And then from there, as it became clear that the Americans were unaware, the situation grew dire. Does that make sense then?
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty much the idea that they do that a lot where they'll throw a bunch of blah, 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 and then make it clear that it was a dependent clause. So you just have to read quite a bit ahead. That's why I always recommend finishing the entire sentence when you're doing something like that. It's very tempting to read a few words and pick an answer, but I would always just read the whole sentence. Okay there? Okay, online, any more? All right, cool. I'm going to assume that is it then. Thank you guys, and I will hopefully see you one more time before you guys take December, but thank you.